We're supposed to have a constitution that protects certain rights, and we've evolved into a society that, thinks we have those rights when we really don't, and that's what's so scary. That's what's so intimidating about everything that's coming out, is we're supposed to be in a country where that type of stuff doesn't happen. The Chinese do the same thing, but at least people know in China that they're constantly under surveillance.
Going through this whole ordeal, how has it affected you? What have you gone through? It must have been a really hard decision to close down Lavabit. Can you tell us about that ordeal that you had to undergo?
Well, I've compared this decision to, the choice that somebody goes through when it's time to put a beloved pet to sleep. It's the choice between watching something you care about a lot suffer and eventually die, or choosing to take what you think is the merciful choice and put them to sleep. With me, my ethics, I felt that the ethical choice, the one that I could live with the best after it was over, would be to shut down. But it was hard because it meant walking away from 10 years of my life. And particularly at a time when, after those 10 years, I had finally managed to grow the business into somewhat of a success. It was, I'd finally been able to earn enough money that I could work on it full time, and I had another person working on it close to full time. And it was making money. It took 10 years, well, it took 8 years to get to that point, and we're talking about thousands of man hours that I still hadn't really seen a dividend on. I think overnight I've really had to transition myself from being a small business owner and a software developer and an introvert. I mean, I've spent most of my time over the last 10 years talking to a computer into, like I said, overnight a political activist, somebody who's traveling around the country standing on a soapbox, hoping that people will listen and hear what I'm saying and read between the lines and contact their congressional member and, find out what's going on themselves, because, I think it has to stop. If we continue down this road, there's some very dark days ahead, and I think just because of everything that has happened this summer, I've often said that if I had made this same decision 6 months ago, nobody would have understood why, even with the letter on lavabit.com. That same letter 6 months ago, people would have been confused. They probably would have thought I was the one that was being investigated. I was the one that the feds wanted to throw in jail, and that wasn't the situation at all, obviously. And what's happened is, like I said, others have sort of followed in my wake. I've become a catalyst, a triggering event, so to speak. And, as a result, people have called me the Rosa Parks of internet freedom. She stood up for civil rights, African American rights, and I'm standing up for internet privacy rights. And it's just sad that I even have to, because we're supposed to be in a free country. We're supposed to have a constitution that protects certain rights, and we've evolved into a society that, thinks we have those rights when we really don't, and that's what's so scary. That's what's so intimidating about everything that's coming out, is we're supposed to be in a country where that type of stuff doesn't happen. The Chinese do the same thing, but at least people know in China that they're constantly under surveillance. Here we still think that we can speak open and freely and that nobody's listening. We think it's completely random when we get a tax audit. Yeah. We think it's completely random when certain other events in our life happen. And we're learning that it's not as random as we might think, that we're really being watched all the time. And for people who are trying to fight against the government, like I was, that's a pretty scary prospect, because how do you oppose an administration, an imperial president like the one that we have now, if he can watch everything that you do and hear everything that you can say.
And there's a lot of important battles around privacy happening in secret. There's a lot of different orders, there's a lot of different court cases that no one knows about or no one even speaks about. Are you aware of any of these? I mean, I know Google and other major companies are somewhat fighting it in a way, but how do you see things progressing? Where do you see things going? And what's really going on under this secrecy veil?
I know there are a number of other pending cases, both in district courts and in the FISA court, and it's unfortunate that we don't know more about them because, you know, the future of our country is being decided by these courts and we can't read the rulings. I think if people really knew what was going on in my particular situation, they'd be a little frightened at just how far our government is willing to go to conduct surveillance on a particular person. I will say this, that, you know, even though I'm aware of some of these cases, I can't really name names, but, you know, these other companies, they are fighting. The problem is that they're losing. And that in and of itself isn't bad, but the fact that they're losing in secret means that we as the American public never have a chance to object to what's going on. How do you call your congressman about a topic or something that you think is going on that is wrong if you don't even know what's going on? And then what do you say to a member of Congress who also doesn't know what's going on? I mean, if we think about this, you know, appointed officials are lying to Congress. What makes us think they're not lying to the American people? You know, and how do we, as the American people, go say, hey, things need to change when everything that's coming out of the administration says the exact opposite? I guess one thing that bothered me a lot when I first started my journey down this road of internet privacy is just how little Congress really knew about what was going on. I mean, the fact that they would have to read about things in the Washington Post or the New York Times. They didn't know any of this domestic surveillance was even occurring. And who's to say they weren't the victims of this surveillance? Who's to say that embarrassing phone calls or embarrassing emails aren't being held over the heads of our politicians to compel them to do things that, you know, they might not otherwise do? We don't have to go back too far in the history of the FBI to find a director who is more than willing to use surveillance information and embarrassing facts about a person to get them to do something. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's well documented throughout history, J. Edgar Hoover using JFK's secret sexual exploits as a way to get wiretaps and spy on Martin Luther King and then spy on his sexual integressions and use it when he was in jail to play for his wife. So those things have already been happening. You can only imagine what's happening now with the amazing authority and power to know what every single person is up to and doing. And there's been very few people that we hear about making a stand, but you are one of them. Whenever you make a stand for an idea, you face persecution. And if I could ask you, I don't know if you could even legally get into this, are you facing any persecution for your ethical decision of shutting down Lavabit?
I think when I made my initial decision, I certainly was. I think the only thing that kept me out of jail at that point was the government knew that if they took me off the street, the service would shut down, and they didn't want that to happen. I think after the shutdown, they still wanted to arrest me, but I think it got so much publicity, particularly in the days immediately following the event, that, you know, I became a hot potato. They didn't want to add substance to what was already a very legitimate cause by throwing me in jail. I also think they were afraid that if they arrested me, I might just say, well, I'm already in jail, I might as well tell people everything.
And there's still some things you can't talk about.
Oh, there's a lot of things I can't talk about. There's a lot of things that won't even come out if I win in court, because there were multiple issues going on at the same time. I just happen to be fighting one particular issue.
Now, What are you currently up to, and is there any way people could support you or help you?
Yeah, well, the letter that I wrote when I shut down is still available at lavabit.com, and at the bottom of it is a link to donate via PayPal. And we've managed to raise about $150,000 for the Legal Defense Fund, which is incredible because without that money, there's no way I could have afforded the lawyers and the infrastructure that is needed to basically challenge our government. I mean, if there's one thing that the Department of Justice has no shortage of, is lawyers. I think we need to take a few of those lawyers and turn them into school teachers, but that's just me. I know when I probably shouldn't go there, unfortunately. But I'm definitely outnumbered. I'd probably say 8-1.
Wow.
And like I said, even though we've raised about $150,000, my legal team tells me that's about half of what it typically takes to adjudicate a case all the way to the Supreme Court.
Wow. I wanted to know, is there a way for a journalist to keep his sources secure? Is there a way to keep our information away from the grubby hands of the government? To find out, I talked to my friend, also fellow journalist and techie, Tim Poole.
She's like, yeah, you got to tell me you got to tell me who they are, because I'm the police. She actually said that. I wish I had my camera for that. She actually said it.
And then did she tell you, I'm gonna